A lot of it is not individual, it's generational. I think that's the game changer. It's one person at a time, but that one person can impact a generation.
Welcome to the Race to Social Justice, a podcast that explores the myriad racial and social challenges facing the modern world, with your hosts, Keva White and John Kepner. Thank you for being part of the courageous conversation, because when it comes to combating social injustices in America, it is not about being confrontational. It is about being conversational.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, man. In person.
In person. Here we are.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here. I'm really in awe because I know we talked about doing these podcasts, and it's I just when you have a thought, and then you take that thought, put it into concept, and then in concept now we're actually
doing it.
Yes,
yeah. And we're not doing it remotely.
No,
for our first one.
Exactly.
Why don't we start by how this all came about, and then how we decided on the name and how we're going to start these.
Yeah. So I think for me it really I teach a course called The Race to Social Justice, and it talks a lot about. It serves as kind of like the foundation for this podcast, and it's really all about how can we take, how can we have a platform for, professionals from all different professional arenas to talk about this issue or talk about issues of racial injustices, right? And a lot of things has happened. Within the past couple of years now, and I know it's infiltrating inside the workplace. It has to, because the workplace in a lot of organizations, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're for profit, we have guests coming on this podcast from all different workspaces. The vision was, how can we extend it beyond just education, right? Beyond a 90-minute workshop, and how can we build a platform to allow for folks to engage in what we dub courageous conversations, absent of conflict, absent of controversy, so to speak. And so I think this podcast really allows us to do that.
Yeah, and you and I have been talking to each other at least once a month for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And the idea just kind of came up naturally, or almost organically, in our conversations, because we've learned so much from talking to each other. But one thing that happened with me is I was sitting at after the George Floyd thing, groups got together and talked, and it was all over Zoom, of course, but
yeah.
I was with a church group, and we were talking about reactions and so forth, and somebody made the comment that, we white people have to deal with this ourselves, and we shouldn't really put burdens on black people to do this for us.
Yeah. And
so we shouldn't really invite black people into our conversations, sort of thing. And I kept thinking, but it's good to talk about this with our colleagues, our white black colleagues together, and so that got me to thinking that that sort of reinforced for me the idea of doing this, that it is a good thing to talk about this, and to have conversations that are sometimes difficult.
Sure.
And so this is the first one we're doing.
Yep.
We're going to do a series of them, and we're going to, as you said, we're going to call them Courageous Conversations. And this one's going to start out with me interviewing you, and then the second one is going to be you interviewing me.
Yeah.
And then we've got one scheduled with a colleague of mine who's very interesting, who deals with kids with trauma in the city, and but happens to have a former professional athlete, so he has interesting perspectives. And then another one we're going to do is with a woman who teaches diversity, equity, inclusion to white people. Mm-hmm. A white woman teaching white people, but she does it with a black woman as her colleague. So there's a lot of, and those two we've already done.
Correct.
And so we're eager to get them out. But this is the first one. So should I get started?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. Right. I'm excited about.
You don't know what I'm going to ask you.
No, I don't. But you know what? I'm like you said, our relationship has been growing over the course of the years, and I think I've learned a lot about you. I learned a lot about myself, throughout our conversations on race-related issues.
Yeah, so you shouldn't be surprised on too many of the questions.
No, I don't.
So relax.
Yeah.
But I'm going to start by guessing that you're about 55, right?
Plus one more.
56?
56.
Ooh. Okay, so
Yeah.
that means you were born in
1965.
65.
I say
Okay.
I'm
right.
definitely a civil rights
Right.
baby.
You've said that. So
Yep.
I want to start with your mom. So tell me about your mother.
Oh man, my mom was a wonderful, beautiful person. May she rest in peace. She was a single mom, born and raised in Brooklyn. She was the only child, with roots in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. So when all that stuff was going on with Elizabeth City recently, I had kind of flashbacks of when I used to visit there in the summertime. But she was an amazing mom. Raised 4 kids by herself. My dad.
Where were you in the pecking order?
I'm the middle.
You're the middle.
Yeah, I'm the middle boy. So 3 boys and 1 girl, and I'm in the middle. And one thing my mom, I always say about when she was alive, I used to give her both a Father's Day card and a Mother's Day card because she played both roles in our lives. She kept the boys off the streets and out of jail. We got a lot of tough love. Her discipline was unmatched, to say the least. We joke about, when the street lights come on, you have to come. That's kind of like an inner city type of thing. When the street lights come on, you got to go in the house. That's automatic. And my mom did not. She did not play when it came to that. We could not stay out at night. We could not leave the block. I played a lot of basketball, so I had a little bit more freedom than my other siblings, because at least I was allowed to go to the park, because I played a lot of ball, and then I played for high school and college. Yeah, my mom was just somebody that taught us about value, about sharing, the power of love. She definitely showed us that, and most importantly, the power of sacrifice and hard work ethic. She worked like 2 jobs.
Yeah, I want to ask you, what did she do?
She first started out working as a dietitian at as a hospital that closed, is Deepdale General Hospital in Little Neck, New York. She worked there for like 16 years, and then the hospital closed, laid off all the employees, and then she wound up going into retail, working at Macy's.
Okay.
And she retired from Macy's. But yeah, she was just an amazing person. And I thank God for her.
What was that neighborhood like?
Well, okay, so go back. I was born in Brooklyn, East New York, Brooklyn, Kings Highway, in the housing projects. It was duplex housing projects right on Kings Highway. Most of my childhood surrounded in the 70s, and the 70s and 80s was high, drug usage back then. A lot of violence in the community, and again, with my mom being single, she had a few boyfriends and stuff like that, and all I could remember is some of them, their character. Even as a little boy, I recognized that they were shady, if I could use it, that term. And so I saw a lot of things I believe a young kid should not have seen and been exposed to. When you talk about, we teach about the adverse childhood experiences, I know I probably had like at least three or 4 of those out of the 10 that I was exposed to as a child. It was tough times.
So, we hear a lot, and seen a lot, and heard a lot about that I think a lot of white people never realized before, about having the conversation.
Yeah.
Did your mom have the conversation?
Which one, about the birds and the bees?
No, not that conversation.
of the other conversation. Of the other conversation.
Yeah, right.
Not until I went away to college.
Oh, really? Okay.
Until I turned a teenager. Okay. Oh, actually, I would say before that, when I started actually driving and becoming more mobile, and having the ability to move around out of the community. that I knew most of the people
Uh-huh.
around, and back then we had kind of like that village mindset that if you got in trouble, if you did something wrong, before you got home, mom already knew about it because everybody was your mother.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I got the talk when I started driving about be careful, watch where you're going, don't have nobody in your car that you don't know. Certain people in the neighborhood I could not hang out with. I could not put them in my vehicle because I knew they sold drugs or they were into some type of illegal activity. But in terms of having the talk that a lot of parents have to have now about police engagement and being,
Yeah.
I didn't really, it wasn't that type of talk because when I grew up in New York, we had the Police Athletic League, PAL.
Oh, okay.
And I always think that, that's something that they need to bring back because I knew a lot of the police officers in my community. They knew who the kids were. It was a recreation program sponsored by the city where you would kids from the neighborhood would either play basketball, play some kind of sports with the police. It was really a community engagement
Interesting.
effort.
So when you thought of the police at that age, what did you think?
I didn't see the police as like the way kids see the
Okay.
police today, like malintentions.
Yeah.
Because many of them knew my name, they knew my mother's name. Sometimes I would be coming home from school and getting off, because I went to school I had to take 2 buses to get to high school. So if I missed the bus and I was, walking because I didn't want to wait, and I saw, one of the police officers from the 13th precinct that knew us, they would pick us up and bring us home.
Why did you need to take 2 buses to school?
I just lived far. I lived in South Jamaica, Queens, but my school was my high school. I went to Martin Van Buren High School, which was in Queens Village, and so that was way out of the neighborhood.
Was this because of busing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you had
So what was that high school like? I think
All
you
white.
said it's all white.
Yeah, pretty much all white. Martin Van Buren High School
So
back
because
then.
of integration, busing, you went to an all-white school, mostly white students, right? And most faculty, all-white faculty.
Correct. Yeah.
So what was that like?
Different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very different. Different than my junior high school, because in my junior high school was located in my neighborhood, and I could live. It was directly around the corner from where I lived.
You could walk to school.
I could walk to
The
school.
old-fashioned, I could walk to school.
So going to school, I was able to see people that looked like me. Then when I got to the school, most of the kids that were there was from the neighborhood. They looked like me.
Mhm.
And some of the teachers, not all of them, but you had some teachers, white teachers coming in from Long Island to teach in our neighborhood. But there were some black teachers. And the principal, surprisingly, Mr. Pruitt, and his wife was black. It was a husband and wife,
Mhm.
principal and vice principal.
Really?
Yes.
Well, that sounds
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
So you had double trouble if you messed up there.
And so tell me about going to an all-white high school and what kind of experiences you had there, relevant to racism and what we're talking about today.
Yeah, it was culture shock. I would say it really got bad. I really knew about racial tensions and experienced my first bout with racial tension, meaning getting chased while going to the bus. Or getting eggs thrown at you during Halloween was really around when the movie Roots came out.
Mm-hmm.
When the movie Roots came out, there was a lot of I would say black and white
So instead of
conflict.
it yielding understanding of the black condition and racism and the origin of it, it had the opposite effect.
Yeah, but I don't
And
think
you
it was
saw
from,
evidence of opposite effect.
Yes. However, I don't think it was from the white perspective. It was from a black consciousness perspective.
Ah,
It was an awakening.
I see.
Once we saw that,
You
many of
began
us
to see other things that you hadn't seen before
Correct.
about racism.
Correct.
I see.
Yeah,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
You've told me this story before, but I'd like to hear it again.
Sure.
About your track to college.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So, I was the reason why I went to Martin Van Buren High School is because my mother didn't want me to stay in the local neighborhood. It was 2 high schools. I played a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
My nickname was Douse. That's what they called me.
Was what?
Douse.
Douse.
Douse, like douse. Yeah, like douse someone with water.
Oh.
And if you Google Ernie Douse, he was a pro basketball player back then.
Okay.
And so they said 2 things. I looked like him, like I could be his son, and plus I played like him. So that's where I got the nickname Douse.
Okay.
And then growing up in South Jamaica, Queens, everybody had a nickname. Nobody knew our real, that's just how it was in the city. We didn't know everybody's real name. Everybody had a nickname. But there was 2 high schools. There was August Martin, and there was Andrew Jackson High School that was well known for basketball and most importantly recruiting to go to D1 schools.
Okay.
So I wanted to go to one of those 2 high schools, but my mother didn't let me go. She said basketball is not.
All right. So you went to the school that you had to go to because.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
So what did basketball mean to you at that school, the school you went to?
I was a walk-on. I had to actually try out. I was a walk-on. The other 2 schools.
You would have been recruited to the
Correct.
other 2 schools.
Correct.
This one you were a walk-on.
Correct. I was a walk-on. I did not get recruited. I had to try out, just like
Yeah.
all the other upperclassmen, and I didn't play like I thought I was. So it was a little bit more competitive, and it was just different. It's just different for me.
Okay. So did basketball get you to college?
No.
Okay. What got you to college?
Miss Cynthia Gonzalez.
So tell me that story.
Yeah. So I want to go back to where you about the college, because there is a interesting piece about how I actually got to go to SUNY New Paltz. There's 2 parts.
Okay.
Because I had filled out the application to go into the military.
Oh.
Because things were really, really bad in my community, and one of the things I want, most kids want to just get out of that situation, right? So I had filled out the application to get recruited for the Army, and the day that the recruiter was supposed to come to my house to sign off on the papers with my mother, my acceptance letter came for the college at New Paltz.
Wow.
So I would say if it was another day, another 2 days, or maybe even a week later,
you would have become a drill instructor.
I would have probably went to the military.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So fate has it that my letter for the college of New Paltz came that very morning, on the afternoon that this recruiter was supposed to come and sign me up with all these papers.
Wow. And you had clearly decided if you got in, that's
I
where you
wanted
were
just
gonna
to
go.
get. It was bad internally in my household and also in the neighborhood. It was really tough.
All right.
So
what role did this? What was her name?
Cynthia Gonzalez.
Cynthia Gonzalez.
Yeah. So she worked at this agency called the Tuitions Assistance Program. Back then they had what they called TAP, Tuitions Assistance Program, for quote unquote underprivileged kids, low income, which I fit those criteria. And her goal was to help you get into a 4-year college. And so New Paltz, the College of New Paltz, was a state university of New York schools, part of that school system. And she educated me, number one, about what that whole system was about, helped me fill out all the TAP and the Pell Grant applications, and wound up going with me up there for orientation, and I wound up getting accepted.
She went with you?
Yes.
Good for her.
Yep.
Good for her.
Yep.
But it wasn't basketball.
It wasn't basketball.
So
and I had to try out for New Paltz too. I wound up playing for New Paltz, but I was a walk-on. I had to try out for there too.
Interesting. So I want to go back to your mom for a minute.
Sure.
Because and I'm gonna do word association.
Okay.
New Jersey Turnpike.
Speeding.
A trip to see after your mom died, I guess.
Yeah. So
A trip back with your family, New Jersey Turnpike.
What was that like? Coming back from Elizabeth City?
Yeah.
Solemn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough.
But you told me a story about how you, if you'd see a flashing light, there was an automatic routine you would go through.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I call that I came up with this term. It's called the silent trauma of racial injustice.
Okay.
And so what that is for many, particularly African American males, I would imagine that they can attest to what I'm about to say. I'm 56. I've been driving since I was 17. I had my driver's license since 17. I lived in New York City at the height of racial profiling. I went to an all-white high school, and then I go to college in a predominantly white community, New Paltz, New York. And relentlessly, every time I would leave to come home on the weekends, I would get stopped before I get on the New Jersey Turnpike. It never fails. I would get stopped. I drove a 84 Honda Accord, and the windows were tinted. And you couldn't have a certain hue of tint on your windows back then. It was illegal. And I had the right hue. It wasn't too dark. It wasn't a limousine tint. And I still would get stopped, right? So now, even as an adult driving, if I see, if I pass a police car, or if I see lights flashing in my rearview mirror, but most importantly, if I pass a police car, I have to internally say to myself, don't look in the rearview mirror. Don't look in the rearview mirror. And instinctively, it's like I can't control it. I look to see if the lights are flashing or if I'm about to be get pulled over. And so I call that the silent trauma of racial injustice, because internally everybody in the vehicle doesn't know. I don't show my kids that I'm afraid or I'm scared or anything like that. But inside, I'm thinking I don't feel like, particularly now in today's society, I don't want to ever get stopped by police officers right now.
So you not only notice that, but then you get ready, you have your driver's license and registration all ready, and
I have it all set up, all prepared.
Yeah.
And it's something I don't think, other drivers would have to experience that.
No.
Yeah.
So, raised by a single mom,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll hear from Tim Massaquoi, he was as well.
Yeah.
And I made a comment to him during the end of that interview that it was something we have in common, that my father died when I was young too.
Yeah.
We have that in common, but I have a feeling that that's about it as far as what we have in common about not having a dad around. And so what was that like for you? You mentioned a little bit about your mom compensating for that. She was both, and she'd have a Father's Day, Mother's Day.
Yeah.
But how was it for you growing up, but also then now that you are a dad?
Yeah.
So talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, it really...
If you're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. It really has made me a better father. It has made me, I think, the father that I am. And sometimes my wife says, "Oh, you I got 2 girls. I love them to pieces." And sometimes I have to watch that. I'm not trying to overcompensate. That I'm not trying to live vicariously through them what I didn't have as a child, their age 5 and 7. But yeah, it really. I struggled with. Fathers are a connector, especially with sons. When you see businesses that says Johnson and Sons.
Yeah.
That's
Sanford and Sons.
Yeah, Sanford.
Right.
Yeah, that's part of your identity, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have that male connection as a young boy, you get a little lost in terms of your identity, because your identity formation starts with your connection with another male. Right, as a boy. And plus, so for example, my girls are understanding the type of man that they're gonna look for by watching me and how I love their mom, right? And how I treat them.
And you didn't have that.
And I didn't, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there were men in my life, but they were dysfunctional.
They weren't the role.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. The next thing I wrote on my yellow pad here that I think is really interesting is that you were a DJ.
Yep.
At one point.
Yep.
So what happened between graduating from college and becoming a DJ, and why did you become a DJ?
So actually, I was a DJ before I went to college.
Oh, you were? Okay.
I just turned professional when I went to college.
So you should never make assumptions.
When I got I mean, I considered becoming professionals when you get a check, when you get paid. So
Yeah.
I became professional when I got my first check for DJing a fraternity party in college. But I always used, so DJing and basketball, I would say, was my saving grace. It kept me away from the streets, because guys my age, 14 and 15, I would sit on my stoop, me and my brothers, on 109th Avenue in Jamaica, Queens, which ran east-west from Merrick Boulevard to New York Boulevard, and those two boulevards were highly crime, high-ridden drugs. And we lived in between those two. And so we would sit on the stoop and watch these 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old boys up and down the street on high-end motorcycles, high-end cars, and all of those things. And it could be very enticing if you didn't have the grounding that we had from our mother, right? The discipline. And then we had other outlets. And so for me, it was music, DJing, and then was playing basketball. And the third one was actually school. Like I didn't know it then. I'm an educator now, but in order to be an educator, you have to be educated. And I did not play with my grades. My mom, she didn't have no problems with me. When she passed away, ironically, we were cleaning out her place, and I found all my old report cards, because she kept everything. I found all my old report cards, all my certificates, and I showed them to my daughters. I'm like, see, look, this is what it's all about.
Well, now we talk about you coined the phrase the K factor, because these sessions that we're having are about imparting knowledge about racism and that sort of thing. Was it as a student? Did you love to learn?
I love to learn. Yeah.
It wasn't just getting grades.
No.
It was you loved to learn.
If my mother was alive right now, she would tell you, when we used to take the bus, I would just ask questions all the time. I'm very observant. I would look out the window and ask questions. What's that? What's that? Very, very inquisitive as a child. I would spell words and stuff, or for signs. I would read the signs to her. I just like to learn. And now, I try to, download at least 12 to 14 books a year, and I just love knowledge. I think it's very important.
So what was it about DJing that you liked?
That was just I think that was my outlet to not get gravitated to the streets.
Okay, it was one of those.
It was
one of those three factors that just kept.
And plus, I was.
And there must have been a lot of discipline too.
Oh yeah. I was good at it too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not not toot my own horn, but I still have some of my style. I kept some stuff for nostalgia, but it was definitely a skill. It was definitely it was about focus, timing.
Yeah.
Was another good, and then I learned about technology and electronics and what equipment I needed and all that. So it was.
So at some point, though, you transitioned and got a social work degree.
Yeah.
Right? And so where did that come from? What was the reason you picked that discipline at that time?
I would say it was circumstantial.
Okay.
Because the circumstances was so in New Paltz, I'm playing basketball, I'm DJing, got your girlfriend, and you're running around, and you've missed the deadline to fill out all these financial aid papers. And so there's no way I can go. My mother couldn't pay for my schooling.
Yeah.
So I had to wind up working to get a job. So they had a job fair on the campus of New Paltz, and I actually got hired working at the Children's Home of Kingston, New York, as a junior counselor.
Oh. Okay.
And so I could pay for my, of course I took the Pell Grant out, I took a loan out, but there was certain things I still needed to. Sure. I needed a couple of $1,000s that my mom couldn't give to me. So I wound up getting a job. My major in New Paltz was in business administration, marketing. But once I got this job at the boys' home, the boys' home in Kingston, there was an instant connection. I saw myself in them.
Now, were these kids that were orphans?
They were foster. It was a foster care
home. Foster
home.
care thing. Okay.
Yeah, foster care home. Okay. And I used basketball as my connector.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that got you interested in the social work side of things.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now, but you're not, in a way you are, but in what you're doing now, educating about racial justice, that's a step removed from that. So why that? How did this whole topic of racial justice become such a big part of your DNA?
Yeah.
And teaching about it?
I'm just tired of society being the way that it is.
Uh-huh.
I see a lot of disparity. I see a lot of people getting treated bad. I have experienced a lot of injustice. A week doesn't go past that I don't experience something. Even in this stage of my life, I don't experience some form. It could be from a minor situation to something very major that can. If I didn't have the stamina and the understanding and awareness, self-awareness for me, and maybe some awareness for the person that's trying to provoke some type of racial situation, it could be a tough time, and some days it just gets tiring. But I really tell you, the one that really pushed me to this is in the workplace, and that's why I do a lot of stuff in workforce development, and my focus is there because I think it's just a really sad reality when I'm encouraged as a young boy, stay in school, get your education, and I've done that. I have my master's degree, I have 2 licenses, I don't use them now, but I keep them active even though I'm not in direct practice. However, when I was working, every agency that I worked for, someone who was white with the same credentials, less experience, always made more money than me. Always made more money than me. And so I started to question, what's the sense? What was the rationale for me being pushed to do these things? And then you get into the world and you get into the workplace, and there's this huge gap that you have to deal with.
So I could ask this at the end, but maybe I'm just going to jump at it right now. So you grow up in this environment where you see and experience racism.
Yeah.
You now, like you said, your thirst for knowledge, the more knowledge you gain, the more appreciation you get for what's involved with racism, but it's ever present in your life, right?
Yeah.
And you were just saying how you see instances all the time, and your awareness is greater because it's what you teach, it's your profession.
Yeah.
How do you stay hopeful, or are you hopeful?
Yeah.
How do you not get just like totally depressed that it continues and you see it, and now it's white people are more conscious of it, and we see it more.
Yeah.
And how do you handle that?
Yeah. Every semester, every class, every student, every year, every month, every training that I conduct is my way of just chipping away a little bit by little in the social injustice. Think about how we met. Chipping away,
right.
just chipping away at it. When someone gets an aha moment from one of my courses or one of my classes, that's my hope. That's my hope of staying in the fight. That somebody, because here's the thing, a lot of it is not individual, it's generational. And so, but you have to change the individual that's provoking any type of racist tendencies in order to change the generation. So if I can get to that one individual, whether it's it's something to change their thinking about how they was raised, and as a result of that, they're going to start teaching their kids differently. I think that's the game changer. It's one person at a time, but that one person can impact a generation, right? So that's what keeps me keeps me hopeful.
All right, that's good. So why did it become training that became your way of became your profession?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, you're a professor at Rutgers. You teach at Rutgers. You teach seminars and so forth. Why is it that you picked that avenue You could have picked other avenues that chipped away.
Right.
What is it about teaching?
I think that's the platform for me where I feel I can make the most impact, right? And because that's why our mantra is to teach, train, and transform. And the whole idea is, I think that's the place where I have the most influence to transform someone's thinking, is by sharing of knowledge, sharing of experience, sharing of different perspectives. I think is very important. You know, when I was growing up, there was a commercial, the United Negro College Fund, that said, "A mind is a terrible thing to waste," and that knowledge is power. It holds all these cliches. Knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that knowledge is not only power. Knowledge is necessary, because it's necessary to change how people interact and how people think about one another. Mm-hmm. So I just did a training early this morning. And one of the persons, we were talking about communication styles across cultural differences, and how different cultures respond differently to certain aspects of life. And so hospitality, for example. So it was one lady that was from Trinidad, and when she would go and she was a home health aide, when she would go with the social worker into this, of course it was a white home, the family thought that this lady, the home health aide, was being disrespectful because she wouldn't want to take off her coat when she entered into the house. Mm-hmm. Well, I noticed, and not just because I'm a cultural trauma, but I just noticed from being around Caribbean people, is that my question to the person was the home welcoming? Mm-hmm. Because it's not that she's not opening up. The house has to be welcoming. And so Caribbeans, you have to ask them, please have a seat. Please let me take your coat. And since the person didn't do that to her, she's not welcome in the house.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Now you see how we did. I came in. What'd you do? You showed me around. You walked me around. The house has to be welcoming. But the moment that it's a person of color, and there's a disparity, we get blamed. We get blamed for
it's
the disconnect.
Fault
Yes. Without having an understanding, like understand who she is first before you. Now the question is, were you welcoming? Right.
So that reminds me of another question I want. This is great. So you have a multicultural family.
Yes.
Now.
Love them to pieces.
All right. And so tell us a little bit about that, and how, in the context, through the racial lens.
Yes, Lord.
What are the implications of that?
Well, let me say this. I am happily married. July 20th will make 8 years for me and my wife, but we've known each other for 18 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We were friends before we became lovers, so to speak. And so interesting, my wife's a Latina. My wife is from Latin. She's from Guatemala, and our children are biracial, and we talk about it all the time. Like, okay, so now what do when they get old enough, and even now sometimes we figure out. So what do we put down when they ask for race? Right? Do we put other? Well, they're not an other.
Yeah.
So what do we? They're not Black, African American. They're not all that. They're mixed, right?
Yeah.
And so we said we're gonna when we would put other, we're gonna put in the other. We're gonna write Afro-Latina.
Afro-Latina. Okay.
Yeah, they're Afro-Latina.
Yeah.
So we have to come up with our own category, right? Because it's not. We don't want them to lose any part of any of their cultural makeup. So I think, and they're both dark. They would pass for African American because of their skin tone, because they're dark, they're fair skinned. So I don't worry about them as much as if they were boys. If they were boys, then I would, particularly the climate that we're in, I would be concerned. But from a racial injustice standpoint, one of the things we do with our girls is they are cultivated around difference ever since they were babies.
Well, they've been cultivated
around different cultures, around different.
They experience different cultures.
Yeah, like they didn't grow up like with me.
Okay.
In my neighborhood was all
Right.
African Americans.
Yeah,
I didn't see
yeah.
white people until I went to
Yeah.
Martin Van Buren and New Paltz. For
Yeah.
them, at their daycare, Mother Goose Learning Center, and I'm learning the economy of cultivating your kids is important. Some African American families may want to do that too, but they just don't have the means to do it. To send their kid to a diverse, so they have to take them to the community center, where But we've been blessed to be able to send them to a place where it's not just kids that look like them. It's kids from all. So, and my oldest daughter's circle of friendship, she has white friends, black friends, Asian friends, and in my opinion, that's going to take her further than if she just stayed in one circle of influence.
Good to hear. That's really good to hear. So let's switch gears a little bit away from the personal side to the professional side.
Yeah.
You teach racial justice and dealing with urban poverty, all these wonderful courses that you have to white people and to black people and Asian people and all sorts of people.
Anybody that want to learn.
What's the biggest obstacle that you encounter in your trainings with white people?
The biggest obstacle,
or maybe your perception of what's the biggest obstacle for white people to learn.
Yeah.
So there are two questions here. What's your biggest obstacle in teaching white people, and what's their biggest obstacle?
Right. So I would say for me, it's not two things. Not taking on the burden of representing the entire African American race. So I diffused that right away. Like, I'm coming from an Afrocentric standpoint. However, this is my experience.
Yeah.
I can't speak. I'm not here to vouch and speak for every person of color, because that's just too much pressure, right? So that's for me. And then one of the challenges I see with white participants in the group is they are, and this is just my perspective, right?
It's your professional.
I think they are afraid to say the wrong thing. So that's why they stay quiet.
That's definitely true.
That's why they stay quiet. So most of the time, like I said, this morning I just did a training, 24 people. Out of the 24 people, there was 2 African Americans on the training. And out of the remainder of those, only 4 people were vocal.
Yeah.
Right? So I had to train myself, John, to be okay with the silence, because silence means a couple of things. Silence means, one, that they're listening, which is good. They're taking it all in. And the other one means is that I would rather for them to be silent than to say something that's just going to just turn the whole course into a,
Yeah. Why do you think white people are afraid to say anything? Because I've experienced this too.
About not you
Being in sessions, especially after the George Floyd thing, where people were talking in mixed sessions.
Yeah.
Where all the insights were coming from, and all of the discussion was coming from the black folks.
Yep.
And the white people didn't feel comfortable talking about it. And I think it may be partly because of a lack of understanding and worrying that they'll say something that will be offensive.
Right.
Two things. Saying something will be offensive, and then not understanding the conversation yet.
Yeah, I think you can't have an expression of something that you haven't experienced. If you follow, for us, like when my wife was pregnant with our daughters, she would say one thing: please don't say everything's gonna be all right. Don't tell me that. That's what she told me, because you don't know. Right, exactly. You ain't feeling what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So don't. I don't. Out of all the things, you could give me the ice chips. You could give me. But when I'm in labor, don't even talk about. Don't worry about it, baby. It's gonna be all right. You gonna be, because you don't know it's gonna be, because you ain't been. Right. So I think that's part of it too. Like, if you never experience racism or discrimination, it's hard for you to really talk about it from an empathic standpoint of understanding. There has to be some kind of connection there to really authentically say, you know what, Keva, I understand what you're talking about, because, man, I was pulled over by a cop too, and he was an asshole.
Yeah.
Excuse me. He was terrible.
Yeah.
And it could be a white person that had that experience. It's the experience, I think, that leads to
trying to relate similar experiences.
Correct.
Yeah. And what about the opposite? What's the obstacle that you face in your trainings with black people?
It's a couple of things. I would say the first one is what I call the crab in the barrel syndrome. And basically, what that is, and it happens all the time, like, we're the ones that got away. Right? And I have a buddy of mine, his name is Stephen Lewis, and he's in Kansas City now. He's a professional, he does the same work, and we always talk about this all the time. He grew up in Baltimore, and he always say, we dodged the bullet. We dodged the needles, the drug needles on.
Yeah.
And so we're the ones that we got away. And so part of it is that I have to deal with is not convincing, but making sure that I am as competent as possible. Because I will get the most criticism if I say one, and some of it could be out of genuine concern, like if I have a misspelled word on a PowerPoint. I would get a negative comment in the evaluation, or from a person of color, than anybody else. Like the criticism could be at a heightened awareness, because it is in our nature to see us fail. Yeah, to see other people fail, because their failure. Well, my success is could be a mirror, a reflection of their failure, or their continuing to stay in the same situation. You follow what I'm saying? Like, so I've been out of South Jamaica, Queens for over 20, 30 years, and I love my younger brother to death. He still lives there. So when he comes out to visit, I could just see it a little bit about his, just like, I wish I could get out, and so I know that some of that success can be a mirror reflection for a lot of people of color, for their failure.
We were talking earlier about, you were referencing being bused, across a long way. So when I say affirmative action, what does that mean to you?
It doesn't mean nothing to me, to be honest, because first of all, I don't need the government to affirm my destiny. And I don't want to sound aggressive about it. I just feel I'm like minority. Like as a businessman, why do we have to have these type of things if we're living in a society where we stand up in games, in the baseball games, and we have to pledge to the Pledge of Allegiance, and with liberty and justice for all. And so for me, if that's the case, why do we need things like affirmative action? Why, as a African American business owner, I have to fill out a separate certificate as a minority business owner in order to get contracts? Why is that if we're in a country where it says land of the free for everybody, with liberty and justice for all? Those that's
if they were true.
If they were true, yeah. So I think affirmative action is good for those who it can benefit from. But it didn't impact. I had to work hard for all that I had. I didn't,
And when I say reparations, how do you feel about reparations?
I don't think there's no amount of monetary money that can pay for the psychological, the emotional, and the generational damage of a 400-year institution of slavery. I don't think there's not an amount of money that can pay for it, to be honest. 40 acres and a mule, that was the promise. And so my thing is, if you didn't get that, now I'm not saying that it's not a just cause to pursue.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to exhaust my energy on that. I'm going to continue to work hard and do the things that I need to do. Again, I think reparation is looking for, this is just the government to take care of you, and I'm not looking for that to happen.
Okay. To what extent is your life story and your profession and what you're doing motivated and all by religion, your faith? that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
that's all I have.
So tell me about that.
Is my faith. As a
Yeah.
Christian man, that's all I have is my faith. My faith washes away all fears. My faith is the foundation for everything that I pursue. I get up in the morning every day and I have my devotional time. I get my instructions for the day and I try to execute with excellence everything that I was commanded to do in that private time of my life. I think my faith has brought me to where I am today, to meet you. Because I got a call from Episcopal Community Services to do some pro bono work at a conference at the Jewish Museum, the American Jewish Museum in Philadelphia. It was a Saturday. It was a non-paid gig. Now, if my quest was only for money, I wouldn't have took it. If it was 20 years ago when I was DJing and I was out, and it was all about getting paid, I wouldn't have took it. But my quest today is not about money, it's about making meaning. How can I make a meaningful impact? When I leave this place, I want to be able to touch as many lives as possible in terms of trying to be better with cross-cultural relationships, right? And so my faith just said, just to go do it.
And when did that happen? Was that from when you were a little kid? How did this evolve that's so important to you?
In terms of my faith?
Your faith, yeah.
Always went to church.
Yeah.
But going to church doesn't mean that you have a relationship.
So mom took you to church?
Mom and my grandmother took us to church. We grew up in a Baptist church.
Okay, all right.
But it wasn't until I became a man that I developed a relationship.
Got it. Okay.
Right? And that's the difference. Religion and
yeah.
relationship,
No question.
two different things.
Yeah. I was listening today to a interview of Dan Rather. Remember Dan Rather?
Dan Rather, the old news anchor.
He's 89 years old now, and
Wow.
he was asked. It's a series 70 over 70. Not something you would listen to, but I would. And he had a defining moment in his life. He was a local broadcaster in Houston, and the biggest hurricane ever hit. I forget the year, 61, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he covered it on the spot, out in the storm, and came up and had the opportunity to think about that. They had radar that they could show on TV, and he suggested that they superimpose the map of where the hurricane was over the radar so that people could see the gravity of this. And I think it was the first time that ever happened. And a few days later, he got a call from CBS News in New York and said, "We want you to join us in the big company."
Right.
That was a defining moment in his life.
Yeah.
That determined the rest of his career.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has a defining moment, but have you had a defining moment that sort of steered you to where you are now, where you're going?
Career-wise or personally?
Either way.
Either way.
Yeah.
I think my defining moment personally as a man was a failed marriage back in 2004.
Okay.
It was devastating. It was traumatic. I was very young and dumb.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of a defining moment of shaping me into the man, into the husband, into the father that I am today. I think that was my defining moment personally. I would say my defining moment professionally in terms of teaching is I was working in Baltimore City, and there was this young lady by the name of Salima Jackson, who was, she owned her own, private social service agency, and she was pregnant. But she was teaching at Morgan State University. Now this should tell you how I got into teaching. So I don't know if something about me, she must have, because I did a lot of meetings, a lot of public speaking events for the city. I ran the public mental health for the city. I was the deputy director for the behavioral health system in Baltimore at the time. And so I had to do a lot of stuff, report outs and stuff like that through the city and the mayor's office and all those things. And in those meetings, again, only male, African-American male, person of color, in that arena. So I don't know, I must have stood out some kind of way. And I think my DJ skills kind of helped me in terms of not being afraid in front of audiences. But long story short, she approached me one day after a meeting and asked, hey, would you like to cover one of my classes at Morgan State? And I started working as an adjunct professor at
Wow.
Morgan State University, teaching in their School of Social Work.
Because this person saw this
She must have saw
gift
something
in you that you
Yep.
just, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. You and I we get together regularly.
Yeah.
And we talk about your business and how to bring this message to lots of other people, and hopefully you're a born entrepreneur, so I love that part of you, which we didn't talk
Yeah.
about too much. But we were on the phone one day, and it was the day that we were waiting for the jury to come in
yeah.
with the Chauvin trial.
Yeah.
And I said to you, do you want to break and go watch it? And you said yes. But you said yes with a lot of feeling.
Yeah.
Can you describe what that feeling was, and why you said yes? So I expected you to say yes, by the
Yeah.
way, but what was in your gut? What was happening?
It was O.J. Simpson trial times I would say 1,000 in terms of emotions and the knot in my stomach, because you mentioned, you asked, when did I have a defining moment? I've shared that, but however, as an African American male, I had a lot of the moments of depletion, like emotional depletion. Every time you turn on the TV, you see this happening over and over and over. And so your hope gets depleted, and now I got to replenish. I got to find that strength to try to replenish it. And so on that day, I said, if this don't go out, I'm not gonna have my sense of hope is just
Your
gonna
emotion
be.
will be drained. You'll just be totally.
Yeah, I think it would have just
Yeah.
washed out my sense of hope, and I probably would have just stopped.
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably would have not even said I want to teach another class, another
Yeah.
course, because this is crazy. There's no way. I would have
Yeah.
just been totally depleted. So I was fearful.
Okay.
I was fearful of that. I didn't
Yeah.
want to. It was really intense.
Okay. Well,
really
thanks,
intense.
Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
all this with me today.
Thank you. It's
and,
good.
Everything on this, covered just
Checked
about
off.
everything I wanted to cover.
Awesome.
As usual, I learned a lot, as I always do from talking with you. So,
Nice.
so this is our first,
Yes.
and we're going to do a lot of these. No, it's actually our third, but it's our first sequence.
That's right.
And we're going to break and have dinner, and then you're going to be at me
That's right.
for our second.
That's right. We're going to tag team.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
See ya.
Appreciate it. Thanks for
Great.
listening.